Welcome. You've clicked yourself onto Three Guys and an iPad, the only mortgage-focused podcast that's gluten-free. I'm Brian Rieger from Content Beacon, and I am one of the aforementioned three guys. But today we're down a man. Mr. Grant is not able to join us. Hopefully we will see him in a final thoughts segment. So I am joined by the person we like to consider our eye candy from Austin, Texas, and guaranteed rate affinity, Mr. Kevin Breeland. Kevin, how are you today, sir?
Doing well, Brian, and I wanted to show that I do have my COVID passport.
Outstanding. That's good to hear. Hopefully you all out there are getting vaccinated, but we won't touch that too deeply here. If you don't want to, hey, that's fine too. Do what you like. But this is the part where we do make our shameless plug for Content Beacon, the premier B2B content marketing agency in the industry. If you're a wholesaler trying to reach brokers, warehouse lender trying to reach correspondents, and of course, lender to realtor, give us a shout. Also, if you'd like to be on the show or know someone who should be, have a topic, anything like that, just an idea, shoot us an email, and that's going to be either brian@contentbeacon.com or rick@contentbeacon.com. And with that, enough about us. We've got three very special guests here today and a pretty exciting topic. Our first guest is in Plano, Texas today. You may know him as a former manager or managing editor at Housing Wire, but he has been the principal and co-founder at Gaffney, Austin, also one of the premier agencies in the industry. Welcome to Jacob Gaffney.
Welcome. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, I'm excited to talk to you here. I'm excited how all three of you are here. Our next guest comes to us from Madison, Wisconsin. He's a senior marketing executive, and he's been in the industry for some time. Believe it or not, he started as an accountant, but he's helped build up several credit unions, marketing teams with lenders, servicers, mortgage tech companies. Everywhere he's gone, all he's done is build companies, and he's done that by building successful marketing departments, business development, and so forth. Dan Green, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thanks, Brian. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. And our final guest, Darcy, why haven't we had you on yet? I'm ashamed that it's been this long before we've gotten her on. She is also an industry veteran, and all she's done is build successful marketing models wherever she's gone. She's currently the VP of Marketing Enterprise Solutions at West, which is a Williston Financial Group company. And she is in San Juan Capistrano, California, where it is undoubtedly nicer than where I'm sitting in Cleveland.
The dubious distinction of this little community is that it's the oldest residential town in the state of California. It was founded in 1776. It's a mission town.
Darcy, we're going to call you a friend of the show, even though this is the first time you've been here. Welcome. So with that, I'm going to start. Dan or Jacob, maybe one of you wants to start for us here. Pretty much everyone on the podcast today has been on multiple sides of the marketing equation. We've had people who have started agencies, folks who've been consultants. We have, of course, folks who have built in-house units who run in-house marketing departments. We even have, if you include Mr. Grant as well, Mr. Gaffney and Mr. Grant have been editors at major trade pubs. So we kind of cover the gambit here between the dark side, as they like to call PR sometimes, and the light. So I'm going to toss this out there. Generally speaking, how well does the mortgage industry do when it comes to marketing, and even compared to other industries?
Brian, I'd like to say that it does very well, but that would be a little bit misleading. I've got to be honest, because I started a marketing and PR company 16 to 18 months ago. And the reason why I started that company with my business partner, who was in marketing from CoreLogic for a decade, was because we felt that the PR, present company not included, we felt that the PR services offered by the industry were in need of betterment. So I thought that there was a better job that could be done. I thought that there was more engagement that could be had. I thought there was a lot of misinformation out there. My business partner definitely agreed with me. So the way we started our company is, Allison would be talking to me at conferences, and she'd be like, hey, why don't you run more CoreLogic stuff? Why don't you do this? And I'd say, well, why don't your PR companies do a better job of reaching out to me and pitching me and all that? And then after about 3 years of that, we said, well, why don't we just start our own PR company that's going to solve all the world's problems? Well, we did start our own PR company, and it hasn't solved all the world's problems yet, Brian, but we like to think we're one step closer.
Well, and I can vouch for you. Gaffney Austin's done a fantastic job in the industry, and you can tell because you see your articles everywhere. You guys are getting them placed, and I think will agree that, and you know this especially having been an editor, editors will run things that are compelling, non-self-promotional. You know, the trick is making that segue from me to the author of the article, right? So let's go ahead and see what Dan Green thinks. How do we do as an industry, Dan?
I would agree with Jacob. I think we try hard. I think we could do better. But I think look at mortgages. It's got a huge challenge. The mortgage loan, the mortgage product has a huge challenge. When you think about it, it's a mortgage loan's largely a commodity, right? The GSEs pretty much set the rules. GSEs and investors pretty much set the rules. So, one loan to another often looks the same. So how do you make a commodity interesting? How do you get a borrower, a consumer who doesn't really know a lot about mortgages, interested and engaged? You got two problems. It's a commodity. You got three problems. It's a commodity. It's hard for the average consumer to compare one to the next because they don't have the background to do it. And I think the third problem is largely consumers don't really care all that much. They only care about a mortgage when they need it, and they want it, and they want it now, and they want it done, and they don't want to learn a lot about it. I think that's the industry's biggest challenge when it comes to how do you market what's a really important product, what's a really important financial service that actually changes people's lives. So that's always been where I've come at it from. It's like, how do you get people engaged who aren't really that interested in becoming deeply engaged? Because once the mortgage is closed, they're done, right? They make their payment and they don't think about it again until they need the next one. And then they don't think about it much, right?
True. Very true, Dan. And Darcy, what do you think? How, as an industry, how do we do with our marketing, especially compared to other industries?
Well, I think the mortgage industry has always been, in my opinion, behind consumers, certainly, or most consumer good businesses like the auto industry. A lot of the things that we're just starting to do in our industry have been going on for many, many years in other industries. And I think part of that probably is because of regulation. And to your point, it's not particularly sexy or interesting. It lacks the same fun factor as the auto industry.
Where do we do well as a marketing entity, and where specifically could we do better?
I'll jump in, Brian. I think one of the places that we've attempted to do well is introduce technology at the point of origination for consumers and get them engaged in helping themselves and self-originating. And I think that's actually very important when we think about who's coming into the market next. And that's the millennial cohort. They're the largest cohort of mortgage borrowers in history. They're starting to buy homes. They're going to start to buy more homes, and they're going to drive demand over the next, call it 5 to 7 years. And they are, not that they want technology exclusively, but they want technology involved in the process. So I think the large lenders, especially some of the independent mortgage banks, have done a really good job.
Jacob, what do you think? What could we do better in terms of marketing, generally speaking, or where do we excel?
Well, I couldn't agree with Dan more. I hate to say he took the words right out my mouth. I was thinking direct consumer efforts, especially in the COVID-19, has been nothing short of just very, very impressive. People, and I'll tell you why, Brian, because of the lockdowns, people said, I value home. I value my home. I value my family. I value my space. We all adjusted. We're all at home right now, right? So during this outreach, that'll all change, and we'll get back to work some way, somehow. But people who are generally able to afford a home have been able to get one for the most part. Where we fail is the caveat is when we talk the big talk here on the show, but the pull-through rate on mortgages is atrocious. But when you talk to Dan Bailey, right, and he tells you Black Knight shows pull-through rate on refis anywhere between 78, 80%, right? Dan says it's much lower on that, and he's coming. And when you come to the title side, you as many as half of all refis aren't getting pulled through. So there is a big disruption in the way we communicate with the home buyer what is necessary to get to the end. So we're good at starting the mortgage. We're not as good as closing it as we should be.
Oh, and Jacob, you make a great point, and then I know Kevin's got a question for you. And of course, Jacob's referring to Dan Bailey, who is the EVP over at WFG Lender Solutions, really one of the bright minds in the industry. He'll be a guest here very soon as well, but I just wanted to kind of clarify that. Now, I know Kevin kind of had a question for the panel. Kevin, what did you want to ask?
Well, I just kind of wanted to piggyback a little bit off of what Jacob said. So one of the things after 42 years of doing this, one of the things that I kind of noticed over the last 12, 13, 14 months when everybody started working from home more was on the purchase side and even on the refinance side, I noticed that people were putting more value into things within a home that they wanted because what they were learning is that the family time became very valuable within their particular pod, so to speak. And as a person who has advertised, I mean, I did television advertisement in the 90s. You know, I actually had ads on a bus, and I didn't do the milk carton, although I thought about it, but I decided not to because it was amazing how expensive that was. But, you know, I've tried consumer direct approaches most of my career, to be honest about it. And what I have found is that mortgage is not a call to action issue. And Darcy was making that point, comparing to the auto industry. It's just not a sexy call to action. No one wakes up in the morning and goes, "We need to get a mortgage today." You know, nobody does that. You know, my view of marketing is it's really up more to the loan officers. So how do you integrate what the messages that you're trying to do to get the loan officers, or do you even try that, or you keep it more on a corporate level, but to get that message out directly to the consumer, because they're the ones who have to be motivated to start this process.
Well, Kevin, you make a lot of great points there. I'm gonna bring back Darcy Patch now. Darcy, what do you think about all this? What does our industry do well, if anything, when it comes to marketing, and where are we really kind of sorely lacking?
We're doing a much better job of engaging consumers directly and creating transparency. And without singling out companies, I've appreciated over the last several years CEOs of companies, leadership of mortgage companies being very visible on social media, very transparent. In the past, I can tell you companies that I've worked at, we had all these rules about you can't do this on social media or that on social media. That's kind of getting stripped away. And I think some of it has been the result of us all being on Zoom and working at home. But people are encouraged much more to engage on social media and to be authentic. And I think that really resonates with people. I've really appreciated my new mortgage experience, which is definitely different than my prior experiences, where I'm communicated with regularly. I have wonderful mobile apps and computer apps I can log into and see exactly where I'm at. I get emails telling me how much equity I have on a daily basis, tracking where the market's going. It's incredible. And I think anybody that isn't doing that or focusing on those things going forward is going to continue to lose market share, because I think especially younger consumers, they expect that. They've grown up with that. That's the way that they're used to working. And I don't see it going away. And I actually love it. And from a marketing perspective, and I know that I'm kind of jumping ahead, but since I've been doing this, and it's been quite a while, we've shifted a lot from chest beating and just talking about how great our products are. And this is more us selling to lenders, mind you. And now, if there isn't a value prop, if you're not solving a problem, if you're not showing that you really understand what challenges that lender's facing, they're not going to listen to you. They're going to tune you out. And also another thing that's been interesting, and this is more the real estate side of the fence, but and I want to quote this right, but in 2020, HubSpot did a report, And they singled out real estate companies as wasting time, money, and resources. And the reason was they post more things per week, 4 or 5 posts a week on average, and they get less engagement per post than any other business channel. So I think it's important to be transparent and reach out and to be communicating authentically, but you also can't be beating the drum constantly, or it just becomes noise and you get tuned out.
This really rings true, and this is really important. Back to Kevin said it too. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, let's go get a mortgage and is excited about it, right? If they think about that, I agree with Kevin, they either need help or they're not excited about it. But here's the thing. I really do think that all the marketing, the scattershot marketing and mortgages is kind of a waste of time. You need to hit people when they need the product. And when I started in this business in 1801, there wasn't such a thing as social media. You had to do buses, you had to do the milk carton because there weren't buses in 1801, were there? Anyway, you had to do those kinds of things. Today, it's a little creepy, but you can know when people start the home buying process, right? And that's when you need to hit them with the message. Rather than just spend a lot of money, market all the time, although you do need to do some awareness advertising, do real targeted, go to those people who are in the process now. You'll be much more effective. That's point one. So I agree with Darcy completely. And then back to what Jacob said on pull through, it is atrocious. If you're honest with yourself as a lender, it's not 80%, it's not 70%, it's probably more like 50%, because pull through can be defined many different ways. And you can define it in such a way that it looks like 70% and make yourself feel good. But if you're honest, it's more like 50. So that marketing that starts with, engage with them when they're ready to hear your message. But you can't stop there, because the reason pull through can be as low as 50% or lower is purely benign neglect. Marketing has to continue once you take the application, or don't do it in the first place. And this is a perennial problem in this industry as long as I've been involved in it, which is a long time. We take applications, we don't follow through. So to both Darcy and Jacob's point, I couldn't agree more.
Kevin, I know you had a question for the panel. You want to jump in with that?
Well, I wanted to touch a little bit more on the value added proposition. And, how do you get your companies to, one, understand what that actually is, and two, emphasize that in their marketing approach? I think, for example, Rocket Mortgage does a great job at value add proposition in their ads. I mean, when you watch it on TV, the very first thing you think is, well, I can just do this on my phone and move in. And that's kind of the takeaway you get from it. It's not that easy, but that's the takeaway. So how do you get your companies to see where the value add proposition is really where the value is?
To me, anyways, value add can mean a lot of things. And
yeah.
Maybe I'm taking a left turn on you here, Kevin, but when I think this is my chance, I love talking about content marketing, okay? Mm-hmm. Where it's not even, I'm starting to wonder if the term value add is being replaced with the fact that your marketing actually must be, and I'm going to borrow from my lawyer friends here, a thing of value in and of itself. It's not enough almost, to Darcy's point, to beat your chest about what you do. That comes later. To get attention, you've got to provide information that's going to be of interest. Jacob does that with PR when he writes great articles on thought leadership sorts of things. Content Beacon would do that when they write good blogs or run a great podcast or something. So I don't think the entire concept of value add is dead by any means, but when it comes to marketing, I think we're getting away from the here's why you should work with us to here's some really interesting stuff. And when I use the term get away, that might not even be fair, because I know that in the very old days, good salesmen would send articles. They'd clip articles that might be of interest to a prospect, and they'd drop them in the mail. And then, of course, they'd send over a box of donuts, too. But I don't know. Any other thoughts? You guys think I'm off my rocker on that one?
You're not off your rocker. I think that's super important because it's back to the whole, mortgage is commodity. 30-year loan is a 30-year loan is a 30-year loan, right? So how do I differentiate? I add value, and I add value in ways that truly help the borrower. So if you look at a mortgage, it's really the amalgamation of a ton of data about the borrower and about the property, really, and then it's wrapped with all the compliance stuff. It's really, if you want to boil it down, it's kind of what it is. Well, what in that data? I mean, what in the appraisal can the loan officer use to help the borrower understand more of what they're buying, and if they're buying well? I mean, what in the title work? What in the credit report? I mean, what are those points of differentiation? Those products all come back. They all have information on them. Are you using that to engage with your borrower in meaningful ways? That's one way you can differentiate and maybe get a borrower more interested in and more engaged in the mortgage process. Because there's interesting stuff in that stuff. I guess if you're a mortgage nerd, there's tons of interesting stuff in those reports that I'm guessing most borrowers don't uncover because nobody's helping them do it. That's a great way to differentiate. That's a great way to add value.
Great point there, Dan. And I'll add for our viewers. And Darcy will come back to you. I just want to quickly add for our viewers. We have a pretty diverse crowd of viewers here on the podcast. In addition to my family and friends, we actually have realtors, we have lenders, we have title underwriters. So we have a lot of different perspectives. Dan has done the B2C thing with the credit unions and the lenders, okay? And he's also done mortgage tech companies where the target market is a mortgage lender, obviously. Darcy, you've been on several sides as well. You've done valuation technology. You've done a lot of different things. Currently, you're in a B2B role at WFG. You're mostly selling to lenders and occasionally, I don't know how much agents.
Lenders and real estate professionals.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And Jacob as well. Jacob's business is to help those folks. Jacob's business is going to help anyone, B2B or B2C, but I suspect, Jacob, you do a lot of B2B. So just for the folks out there, we've got some different target markets in here, but the overarching principles are the same. And I'm sorry to cut you off there, Darcy. You wanted to add on to Dan's answer there.
Well, okay, I'm going to give a couple of examples of ways. And again, my perspective is a little different because I've worked for companies that provide services either for real estate professionals and brokers or for mortgage lenders. So two recent examples, and one I'm picking out because it involves Jacob. It's when he was at Housing Wire. When I was at Veros, the company, I can just tell you when I started, people hadn't really heard of them unless they were in our industry and really entrenched because of their valuation role. So I was trying to figure out the best way to get us more visibility and to be better known in the industry. So I was at a conference and I approached Jacob when he was at Housing Wire and said, how can I get us more exposure as a company? And he said, give us basically exclusive content that's compelling. And we had data available at the company that while it wasn't really at that point being used specifically for product development, it was very compelling data. It was project.
I think Darcy's having some internet issues again. We will bring her back aboard once her internet gets back up. But
hey, can I jump in there for just a second? Back to the point about data. Everybody who originates loans or who's in the mortgage business has a ton of data. Doesn't get used other than to produce the mortgage. It doesn't get used. And if you mine that data, there's more than gold in there for you as a lender, for you as your borrowers. There's just a ton of information and it will really make you think if you just spend some time with it. I think it's a hugely underused asset in the mortgage industry. So to Darcy's point, I didn't want to lose that. I think it's critical that we start being a little more nerdy around the data and we start to engage with data scientists who know how to make this stuff work. The other thing that's true is there's so much of it, which is maybe why we ignore it. It's just too big to get into. But there's people who do that, and that's another way you could truly differentiate for your borrower. You can teach them a lot in a short period of time. You can reach more of them in a short period of time if you know what your data tells you.
Well, and I'm going to mention this, and then when Darcy's coming back on board, we'll let her go back to what she was saying. But I've worked with Dan in the industry. I've had the good fortune to work with him on a couple of occasions, and he definitely doesn't just talk the talk. He walks the walk when it comes to metrics and analytics. And it's amazing to me sometimes how many folks are willing to wing it on their marketing or go by gut feel, or I don't know how many owners I've heard tell me, I know my market, I don't need numbers. And then proceed to write the 1980s caliber advertising copy or sort of thing. So if you've got that, we sure as heck don't choose our product mix based on gut feeling. Not usually, right? So I think the point's well taken. Darcy's back with us. Darcy, I'll let you finish off your point here, and
I have
that's
never
all right.
had so many internet problems in my life.
I'm sure it has to do with me. I am the Bermuda Triangle of technology. I'm sure it's the fact that I'm the one hosting the call. But
I think it's because I have three 19 to 23-year-olds all here doing college from home, and it's probably draining the internet. But
okay.
Anyway.
No, but well, on that note, we better get your point in here quickly because you were making.
Okay, I'll jump in.
Yep.
Anyway, to get to chase or cut to the chase, we ended up with Housing Wire creating exclusive content, and we were doing these quarterly reports, and then we would do a weekly feature article that would be either a market specific, or we would do, these are the bottom 10 markets and here's why, or these are the top 10. And about not even a year into that program, they did an analysis on which editorial pieces were performing the best. And out of the top 10, 3 of them were ours so far that year at the end of Q1. So it was powerful stuff. People were reading it. We were leveraging it. People were aware of the company. So that was a huge win. One of the things we're doing here at WFG, and Jacob may have touched on it because I keep popping out, not on purpose, but we formed in our lender channel an executive roundtable. And we had our first meeting in November, and it's C-suite executives from national lenders. And we met with them. We did research beforehand. We did a survey of the industry and identified what the top pain points were for lenders. And the focus of that meeting, which was confidential, we didn't, end up saying who was involved or anything, but we had a very open discussion where the lenders talked through the different things that came up, told us anything they thought was different than the findings, but really let us know what their issues were. And one thing that came up, I thought this was seemingly so simple, but it was kind of an aha moment. One of our participants, we were talking about training. She was talking about the fact that all of her new hires, because of the boom, didn't really understand title and closing, and that was creating an issue. And so Dan, who we've talked about, jumped in and said, well, we'd be happy to train your people. That's something we do all the time. And this person's comment was, wow, it would have never dawned on me to ask my vendor to train my people. But see, we're supposed to be partners with our lender customers. So why wouldn't we do that? So I guess as a company, one of the things we're doing, and I wouldn't call it traditional marketing, it's true partnership and engagement, and working together to create solutions. And that's really the message we're trying to bring to the market. And that's the focus we're taking in terms of the things that we're providing. Even editorial, and I know we're going to talk about content marketing.
Yeah.
And then I'll get into how there later.
And you're doing a great job of, this is something that we preach all the time, especially Rick and I, but even Kevin as well. And I don't know, Jacob, your thought on the value of marketing. You have any final thoughts on this one?
Well, I will say, that I was honored to moderate that executive roundtable, and one of the issues to Dan's point was the responsible aggregation and handling of data within those lenders. When you're talking about, it was 12, 13 lenders, and their top lenders, as Darcy said. So when you think about how much data they have in aggregate, and being able to keep that secure and usable and referenceable, was an issue each of them had. So I thought that was it was interesting to hear them how they were trying to talk through. There was no clear solution there among all of them. So I think to Dan's point, it's a issue that's going to continue to crop up and crop up and crop up without solution. So
I want to take a left turn for just a moment. And Dan and Darcy, you probably have the most experience on this roundtable in terms of building an in-house marketing department or building a marketing strategy from scratch. Although, Jacob, On the agency side, you're certainly building strategies. You're building an agency now. And of course, at Housing Wire, you had to build an editorial team and then some. I think you had more than just editorial responsibilities over there. You were very involved in the business. So feel free to jump in as well. But I know that we have a lot of smaller businesses watching. I know we have larger businesses that traditionally haven't really done much marketing, or maybe the owner and his brother-in-law get out and do a flyer once in a while, or not really a true strategy, because marketing, I like to say, oftentimes is hiring LOs or sales reps with books of business, right? And I think that's changing, although that will never go away completely. LOs and the frontline folks are always going to be very important there as well. But I'm going to throw this out there for really any of you, but if I'm starting from scratch here, whether I've just purchased a company, I have a new company, or I have a company that looks around and says it's time to go to the next level and it's no longer good enough to have an intern do our marketing, where do you start with the strategy? Do you go agency? Do you hire someone, bring them inside, a little bit of both, a little bit of neither? Who wants to jump in? Where do you go when you start from square one then?
Done all of the above at one point or another. And my favorite model is exactly what I'm doing where I am now, which is you have someone who's leading strategy, who really understands the business. They're internal, they're part of the leadership team. They can, sit down, meet with everybody in product operations, daily, head of sales. And I think that's important in terms of driving strategy, because one of the things, it's funny, something you said about the flyer and all that just drove home the point that with marketing, I think there's a lot of activity that takes place because people think they need to be doing it just because they see it, but it's not strategic. And I have kind of a weird background in that I used to do product development and management as well, and even run a sales team at one point. So I look at marketing very differently. I dig into the operations and also to the sales team, and I sit down and strategize, and we figure out, what are you trying to accomplish? What products are we wanting to sell? What are we developing? Who's the right market for it? Who's the target audience? So all of the activities that then go into our plan, every single thing is geared to help us reach those goals, or it's not in the plan. And we are able to measure success to some degree, not always as well as I would like, depending, because some things are hard to measure. But by doing that, we're not wasting money. We're not just spinning our wheels. We're making sure every single thing that we're doing is strategic. And I think you need someone internally to do that. That's hard to outsource that function. The other thing, and Jacob's PR, and I have a lot of trust in him because of the relationship we've had for years. And obviously, Brian, you and Rick do content for me. And again, when we get into that, because I'm a huge advocate. We'll talk about why that works and why it's great. But for me, I like partnering with people externally that are really great at what they do, not necessarily big firms, like big agencies where you're paying $250 an hour for, an admin to do the work or something. I like to partner with firms like both of yours, where the principals are involved. I feel it trims layers of fat, and you also get the true expertise. You guys get our industry, it. Jacob was the managing editor of one of the biggest publications in our industry. So he gets it. And when he calls on reporters and represents us, they listen to him, they respect him. And the same is true, Rick, God bless him. I mean, we're working on a white paper now, as you know, and he just gets it. There's not a lot of training or education that needs to take place. But the other great thing about using external resources like that is you can tap the resources you need when you need them, and do a retainer or just a project basis, where if you bring in people internally, and at one point I had a team of 16 people with a multi-million dollar budget, but sometimes you've got a full-time resource that you need more than one of at one point and less than one of at others. So it's not really scalable. And that's why I like the hybrid model.
Dan Green, you've built your share of marketing departments too. If you have a friend coming to you who's just bought or has got a small mortgage business and it's starting to, he wants it to take off, get to the next level, and he says, hey, I've never really done any kind of marketing. Where do I start? What do you tell him?
Yeah, so two pieces of advice. The first piece of advice is, look, marketing is one of your products. Yes, mortgage is what you sell, right? but marketing is as important a product to your organization as the mortgage that you put in front of the consumer that you want them to buy. I'm a big believer in that. And I guess what the next part of that, the second part of that is, I agree with Darcy in that you've got to have somebody internally who understands the strategy and has the long view on what the goals are, right? Because you can't outsource that, you shouldn't outsource that. It's just so hard. This business is incredibly complex. There's a lot of moving parts. You need to understand mortgage lending, and you need to understand, what's important to the market, how the market's working, what consumers are looking for today, and on and on and on. That's an internal strategy person. But I do also think, and I believe this firmly, that you need outside help, like Content Beacon, like Gaffney Austin, because marketing is not your expertise if you're a mortgage lender. Your expertise is making the loan, and you should go out and do that. But while you're doing that, somebody who understands marketing in this business, in this industry, should be guiding you on your messaging and your product delivery and your product design. You can't do it. You shouldn't do it. You shouldn't do it. You should engage third-party resources because it is as important as the product itself.
Jacob, how about you? Do you want to weigh on in this? You're starting from square one, and you've built more than your share of marketing strategies through the years. But what would you tell your friend just getting ready to get started with marketing?
Yeah, I think, marketing, like journalism, is measured by its public success. We mentioned Rocket, for example, their marketing, obviously very expensive. Marketing is something you can throw lots of money at. Should you throw lots of money at? Well, it's really easy to waste a lot of money in marketing and end up with nothing. The first thing I do when I ask new clients is I say, well, what audience do you want to get in front of? And they tell me they have an idea. And I said, okay, so what's your reach? They said, well, didn't you just ask me that? Well, no. Audience and reach are completely different concepts. And they're like, what do you mean? And that gives me an idea of why it helps to have someone like Darcy, who I don't have to have that conversation with to start. You can hit the ground running. But if you don't know the difference between audience and reach, well, it's going to take a month. It's going to take even longer. To Darcy's point, it took us a year to mount an adequate campaign. And what's not measured, she mentioned the 3 most popular articles, right? But what's not measured is the 20 articles it took us to get there. For every HW plus, membership subscription that I started, for the editorial departments, do any of you even remember REO Insider when Housing Wire launched the REO magazine, and then the Obama administration put in Hamp and Harp, and the REO industry dried up? And in 2013, do you know that we laid off 1/3 of Housing Wire because we had overextended ourselves in the conference space and we stopped doing conferences? I mean, for all the successes that Housing Wire had in the last 10 years, there was easily 4 or 5 failures. And that's never really measured, but it's as important. You could argue it's even most important to be part of that learning curve. And unfortunately, that's what gets lost in marketing, is that you have to learn to accept your failures. And that is very, very challenging for everyone on this call. I think they've been in that point where, you get what happened, what happened. Now go tell that to your boss, right? And let's see how they take it and see how well they get it, right? So there's a lot of issues, and I wish that the industry had more patience when it came to this, that they didn't fall all over itself trying to get to that rocket level. I don't know why so many people would want to get to that rocket level. That's not even that market. That's not even an attainable goal. Rocket's already there. It's already done it, right? Where are you going? Where do you want to go? And what market are you going to serve? These are it sounds simple. It sounds like very basic conversations, but Brian, I know you're probably having these on the daily with clients as well. Again, with someone like Darcy that you partner with who already gets it, where we're able to hit the ground running and get going, and that's great too. But if you don't have that own understanding of your own organization, of your own inner workings and your own necessities, it's going to be hard to fix the external messaging when the internal process isn't in place.
Jacob hit on one of my biggest preaching points. So I'm going to take off my moderator hat for half a second, if you'll indulge me. And you just hit it on the head. Failures in continuity. Folks, and the other thing I'll mention is this, the other big point that I can't say enough. I'm blessed right now, both in Content Beacon and with my own other business, True Impact Communications. I have engaged clients, and it's the clients who don't engage who don't last long, and there's not much I can do for them. They have to know their business, and they have to have at least an idea of what we're doing for them. And I'm very blessed right now that I have engaged clients. But the other thing I like to say is that marketing, and I say that in a very broad way, you can't do marketing once and for all. Okay, it's like eating once and for all, right? It's got to be a continuous drumbeat. There are going to be some things that, for any number of reasons, and not just, sometimes there's an assumption that if an initiative fails or comes up short, it's solely because someone failed to execute, or somebody didn't put enough effort in, or didn't do whatever it takes. And there are times where the crosswinds change. There are times where the market conditions change. There are times where the foundation you're building the entire strategy on were not quite what you thought they were. You may not have you may not have the intel that you thought you had. And Kevin's reminding me here, failure is the greatest teacher. Now, I certainly, when I take my agency, and I don't talk, that's not where I lead with failure, but thank you for making that point, Jacob. Like I said, I almost jumped up out of my seat and started singing along. But Dan, thanks for indulging me. Why don't you hop in there too?
Yeah, just a quick point. I mean, I would say that, good marketing takes the long view. And it's just like product development. It's got a roadmap. That roadmap goes out 12, 18, 24, 36 months. You're going to adjust because things are going to change. But it's not a one and done thing. And you are going to fail. There's no question about it. But so do products when you launch them. So it's a lot like product development. It's a lot like product management done right.
Great. I want to jump ahead to content marketing, which is obviously a subject that's near and dear to Rick's and to my heart. But Jacob, Darcy, Dan, I know you guys all have done and do and continue to do a tremendous amount of content marketing as well. Let's talk a little bit about that from the 30,000-foot perspective. How well is the industry doing with content marketing? It's been around maybe 10 years, maybe more in some ways, but it's a fairly recent trend development for the mortgage industry. How well are we adopting it? Where do you see it going in the next few years?
Well, as you know, I've been a huge supporter of the concept for many years. So have been working on it back when it was probably pretty new. I would say over the last 5 years or so, the number of companies that have jumped in and that are doing white papers and that are doing contributed content and sponsored content has grown exponentially. All you have to do is I'll pick out HousingWire again, go into their library of white papers. And it used to be that there were like a couple, tons. And even the demo days, just the involvement of companies doing things like that, it's much more pervasive. I would say the challenge, there are a couple things. One is distribution, and that's what I wanted to talk about with content, because it's wonderful to create good content, and it's imperative that it be compelling, that it address and recognize industry issues and provide solutions to those issues. If it's just chest beating, talking about how cool our product is, nobody's going to read it, or they're going to download it. They're going to feel like they were betrayed, and then they're going to have maybe even hostility towards us. So that's not positive.
There is no shortage of platforms to put your content marketing on. You just have to, again, balance what you're after in terms of understanding. And you should understand which platform you're going to put it on before you generate it, instead of the other way around, which seems to be the other case. So that's a matter of internal budgeting, right? That's a matter of organization.
It's not a case of if you build it, they will come. Promotion and distribution, just
Right.
as it is with journalism and PR. You pick your targets based on where your audience is going, right? So.
Right.
I think that's where you were going. I'll step back off my.
That is where I was going. And as an example, we'll talk about what we do when we do a white paper. We'll create a white paper. We will create distribution channels for it. leveraging media. Sometimes we'll submit a sponsored content piece that links to the white paper. Sometimes we'll host the white paper through a publishing group like Housing Wire. We do all of those things. Great job of is slicing and dicing that content. For every white paper that we get 2 feature articles that come from very different angles. So they sound very different. They're compelling in different ways. Each one of those is then sliced into 3 blog posts, and each blog post is further sliced into like a social post, multiple social posts. So I think at the end of it, I want to say there are like 28 pieces of content out of one white paper. And if you actually leverage all that well, and you get, like in our case, we've got 7 or 8 national sales reps, leadership team. What I will do is take those posts and send them out to the whole team and say, okay, go ahead and share this out. So if you take all of our combined audiences plus our company's page audiences, it's a pretty big reach. So we get that out in front of a lot of people. And I do have trackable links, so I'm able to tell where things are coming from. And it's the combination of all these things that really helps us. We're also fortunate in our company. We have a group of people called marketing technology directors in the West organization.
Yeah, I think I'll go back to what I said earlier. I think there's no shortage of it. I don't think it's timed appropriately. I don't think it's timed correctly. You got to hit people with the messages when they're receptive to hearing it. And I don't think enough thought goes into that. I think another part of that would be if we're speaking about consumers specifically, especially the new generation of first-time home buyers. Do we really know as an industry what they want to hear, what gets their attention? I would argue that we probably don't, and that we probably haven't done the important thing, and that's go ask them before we start doing our content marketing. What I'm suggesting is probably some research that needs to be done of recent borrowers, home buyers, not refinancers, and then folks who are in the market and will, buy a home within the next, 3, 6, 9, 12 months. What would be helpful to them? I don't know that we know. I think we're making a lot of assumptions, and I think we've always done that. I would start there. I'd go out and ask them.
And I'll say this, and I think we have Darcy back while she's coming aboard. I do, you guys will remember a few years ago, pre-COVID, the rage was capturing the millennial unicorn as a home buyer. And I have a client who is a millennial, and he laughs when he hears that because he says, nobody ever asked us what we want. Everyone just assumed. And he said, we saw some of the most hysterical marketing we've ever seen targeted at millennials. But again, back to the point of understanding your market and not being willing to kind of really kick the tires on it. Darcy, you're back with us. Do you want to finish your thought here?
Where did I drop off? I don't even know. I was still talking.
I think you were introducing the concept of the marketing technologists.
Thank you. Okay, because it is interesting, so I would like to share that. Anyway, it's a kind of a unique setup that WFG set up, where these individuals go out and they train not only our title agents and other title agents, but they also train real estate professionals in the industry how to leverage technology, lots of social media, video, all of these things to help generate leads and also just to connect and stay engaged with their consumers. And it's been incredibly effective, but selfishly, it's helped me a lot as well, because I think in our space, especially the B2B technology, that wasn't really something we did a lot of. And especially this year during COVID, it's been incredibly helpful, very, very helpful and engaging. I'm going to give you an example of something someone did to get my business or try to get my business recently that I thought was really interesting. Videos, well, this is video, lots more video usage lately, obviously. This individual through LinkedIn, they were demoing their technology, but it was personalized. They were addressing me personally. They filmed it for me. And I actually ended up meeting with them just because that impressed me. And I may end up engaging with them. They actually have a really great solution. But anyway, I guess that was my main point, is just that one engagement and truly connecting is so important.
Well, yeah, you're right. The old box of donuts doesn't do it anymore. I like to say that, if you're a salesperson, and especially if you're engaged in consultative selling, you don't run across the conference floor to prospects screaming out your specs, right? You start by talking about the speaker, or how about those bears or whatever, and you work into that relationship and you start the engagement. So I couldn't agree more, Darcy. All right. Like I said, the iPad's starting to smoke a little, but I think we got time for one more here, guys. I think, no names, please, but I think we've all seen some examples. I'll give you the option to be positive or constructive here. Let's hear a couple of war stories. What's some examples of the best or maybe the worst marketing? Doesn't even have to be in this industry. I'll let you all off the hook. Who wants to go first?
Do you want something that's current, or can it be
It could
something?
be it could be dozens of years ago, Darcy. It doesn't matter. Just, good example, either a great example. We've already got one great example, Rocket Mortgage. Say what you want about it. There's an example of a successful marketing campaign, at least in terms of if the objective was to bring eyeballs in and get brand recognition. Undoubtedly, that serves as a classic example. Jacob's got his hand up. Jacob, tell us.
Yeah, so war stories. Okay, everyone grab your popcorn. No, this is really quick. And those are, I don't know if you can hear the air raid sirens of Plano in the background, but they test them every month at this time. So you have that to add to Darcy's internet.
Now it's a war story, really. Yes.
So here's the thing: is you have to be prepared that when you take on a firm like Gaffney Austin, we are going to secretly audit your activity, because that gives us an idea, and then we're going to present you with a report saying this is how the market views you, right? So just as a word of advice, don't lie until you bring us on, because we're going to figure it out. If you say you have 200 engaged employees on LinkedIn, and then we go and audit those and find out that 73% of them don't actually exist, and that you've just created this legion of workers who are leaving these great ratings on Glassdoor, and they're all on LinkedIn, but you don't actually employ these people, well, we're not going to be working with you very long. And that it's a good case. So dishonesty gets you nowhere in this industry, and that is the best marketing advice I could give, is to be honest, please. There's just no other way to do it. I'm sure, and we can't name names, and I don't think we have to, but I'm sure there's plenty of marketing PR companies out there that will rep companies like that. But True Impact's not one, RJ's not one, and Gaffney Austin's not one.
Authenticity is everything in marketing. Marketing is not spinning. Spinning is lying. Lying, truth will out. And that's true both internally. If somebody tells you there's something and you find out they're not, their marketing is not going to work. All right, I see Darcy is working your way back in. Dan, do you have a quick war story for us while Darcy's coming back?
I don't know if it's a war story so much, but I'll go back to something Darcy mentioned at the top of the conversation. She mentioned the auto industry and marketing. And I was just in Detroit 2 weeks ago, and they've got an exhibit of automobiles, Detroit designed automobiles from the 50s, 60s, and 70s predominantly. These are beautiful pieces. These are beautiful works of art that I grew up in Detroit. We saw them on the street. And, when they were just coming off the assembly line, we never thought of them that way. But here's where the point I think ties in really well. Detroit did a great job of promoting design and knowing that what customers wanted and then delivering it. And now a mortgage will never be a beautiful automobile. It just can't be, right? It'll never be that exciting. But I think the trick for the mortgage industry is finding those things that, get consumers' attention consistently. And we've never done it. Never done it. So I don't know that we can learn a lot from that, other than, an industry like the automobile industry has a physical product they can really do great things with. But there's more to it than that. They knew what people wanted, and they gave them what they wanted, so much so that everybody got excited about the release of the new model year. How do we do that in mortgage lending? The person who figures that out, be a genius, right? We haven't done it yet.
Getting there, hopefully. Getting there.
And I'd like to piggyback off of that just a little bit. Dan, I grew up in a very, very small town, and when I was growing up, they actually had 3 auto dealers. And when the fall release of the next model year came out, we actually had a hometown parade, and the auto dealers would have their what you would classify as a Starship car, the Chevrolet Caprice or the Ford Galaxy or LTD, and they would be in the parade. And that parade always took place when the fall release of the next model year came out. And even in a little bitty town back in the 60s, they were excellent at getting your attention. My mother would hound my dad constantly about going down and buying a new car.
Yep.
Because, she was at the parade on Friday.
Yep.
So
they knew how to capture attention, and we need to figure that out in this industry. I don't have the answer, but I love the example.
I do think we've got some of the people on this podcast who can help there, Dan, and that does include you as well. Darcy, one quick war story from you, because like I said, that iPad's starting to smell smoke here.
Okay, it's not a war story. It's actually a campaign we did years ago that at the time was innovative. It's not anymore. It's where the whole industry's headed. But it was back when we were Fidelity National Information Solutions, and it was in the real estate channel. And we were going to a National Association of Realtors convention, and we had a whole series of technology offerings back then: broker back office, MLS systems, contact management, CMA, all of it. And we didn't want to look like everybody else. So what we ended up doing was picking one customer for each of the products that was an active user. We asked them, what is your favorite thing to do when you have time off? And because the whole premise is everything that we were doing helped them save time and be more efficient, so they would have more time to do what they loved. And so we went out and had a photographer sent to each place, and whatever it was they said that there was their favorite thing to do, we took a lifestyle shot of them doing it. And those were our images for the campaign. And our current CEO, Steve Azonian, was actually one of our victims for that campaign. He was, at that point, I don't even remember which product he used. I think it was process management. And it was him working on his Ferrari. It was a great picture. I wish I still had it. But we got so much positive attention at that show because it was so different than what anybody had done. It was focused on, again, creating value and enhancing the quality of life for our customers rather than, buy our stuff, it's the best. And I guess my point is, I think that's where the whole industry has been headed. It's been evolving, it's moving there. And the evolution of some of the companies we've talked about today in terms of the, I guess, the experience that they're delivering is just illustrating that.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, Darcy. And I'll tell you, this is a conversation, like we could probably carry this on for a full day. But as I mentioned, we have some limits with our technology here at our end with the iPad. Darcy, Jacob, Dan, a quick opportunity. If you want to provide some contact information, we'll have that in the show notes. Or if you want to quickly mention what you're working on these days, or tell us why folks should be using your company, now's your chance.
Okay. Hopefully it won't cut me off. Anyway, well, I work again for WFG. We have several different channels. We have direct title operations. We're a national underwriter. We have an agency channel as well, where our underwriters work with agents. And then the group that I work with most closely on marketing specifically and strategy is our lender services or enterprise solutions group, which is an appraisal management company, title and closing services, and technology that supports that. And in terms of what we're working on now, we talk about the whole data transparency and customer engagement. We have a platform called My Home that originated in the residential retail space, and we're modifying that and bringing it into the refi space as well. And it's a collaboration platform. It's a place where consumers come in, log in, they're asked a series of quick questions, and it tells them exactly what documents need to be uploaded. That's one of the biggest waste points in mortgage is, multiple emails or requests for the same bit of information, lost data. It virtually eliminates that. So it's definitely beneficial in that regard. I mean, Brian, you know Pat Stone, our founder. This has been his mantra. I've known him since 2000. This has been take time and cost out of the real estate transaction. And we're doing it. We're executing on it. We have an instant title decision engine that we've deployed. We're integrating that into our AMC's platform, which is where people can go to order all their title and closing services. Just lots of different enhancements. Obviously working on e-closing. That's a big one for the whole industry. And some things we'll be announcing there later. We've got a funder dashboard where basically settlement can be managed. That's more for, I would say, for a community lender or credit union, probably smaller, but it manages and centralizes that whole process and automates it. So it demystifies it for everybody involved.
Darcy, thank you for joining us. Jacob, Dan, any last thoughts from either of you, gentlemen?
Thank you for having me on. My name is Jacob Gaffney. I represent Gaffney Austin, which is a boutique, small public relations firm that helps fix your problems.
I love it. I love it. And Mr. Dan Green, what are you doing these days? How can people reach you if they've got some questions? You got a lot of great points today. How could they get a hold of you if they'd like to?
Sure. So, yeah, I do some freelance work, some freelance consulting for small, mostly mortgage-based technology companies, and I'm also continuing some work on lending performance because it's one of those things I'm passionately, nerdly passionate, or passionately nerdy about. I'm not really sure which way to say that. But yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Dan Green, and
Awesome.
happy to talk with anybody about mortgage and mortgage lending anytime.
Ladies and gentlemen, three of the really top marketing folks in the industry, and of course our eye candy and top loan originator, Mr. Kevin Breeland. I'd like to thank you all for your time today. I'll tell you the truth. That old iPad's been sitting at about 5% for about half an hour now, so I'm not sure how much of this we actually got. We'll let you know. In the meantime, Mr. Grant, take us home.